You wake up on a Monday, you blink, and suddenly it's Friday. You remember last summer like it was yesterday, but when you open the calendar, you realize it's been 2 years, 2 full years, gone. And the feeling that remains isn't nostalgia, it's vertigo. Like the ground shifted while you weren't looking. You're not alone in feeling this. And it isn't weakness. It isn't distraction. It's something far older than you might imagine. Something deeply wired into the way your brain was built to survive, not to remember. The question nobody asks is this: why does time seem to accelerate as you age? Why did a single summer feel endless at 6 years old, and why does an entire year vanish without a trace at 30? The answer isn't that you're too busy, it isn't your phone. It's in the structure of time your brain constructs, and in the fact that this time is completely different from the time on any clock. Your brain doesn't record time like a camera. It doesn't capture everything that happens in a continuous stream. It does something far stranger. It compresses, discards, and reconstructs. Every memory you have is not a recording, it's a reconstruction. Every time you remember something, you're literally reassembling that experience from fragments. And each time you do, you alter the original slightly. But what does that have to do with the feeling that life is passing too fast? Everything. William James, the father of American psychology, was one of the first to write about this in 1890. He observed that subjective time, the time you feel, is not proportional to chronological time. It's proportional to the density of new experiences you register. Think about what it was like to learn to ride a bike. Every second was loaded with new information: the balance, the wind, the fear to falling, the texture of the handlebars in your hands. Your brain was working at its limit, recording everything. Now think about what it's like to drive to work on a route you've taken for 5 years. You arrive without knowing how you got there. Your brain piloted on autopilot while your mind was somewhere else entirely. That is the central mechanism. Your brain conserves energy by discarding what is familiar. It only records with intensity what is new, surprising, or emotionally charged. Everything else goes straight and into functional forgetting. And what happens as you age? Your life on average becomes more predictable. You know the places, you know the people, you know the routines. There are fewer surprises per unit of time. And fewer surprises means fewer dense memories. And fewer dense memories means, in your perception, less time lived. It's as if your brain is editing a documentary of your life. In the early years, there was new material in every frame. Now, the editor discards entire hours because they look like yesterday. Neuroscientist David Eagleman called this the beginner effect. In his experiments, he showed that people who live through novel experiences, even for just a few hours, consistently report that the period felt longer than an equivalent amount of routine time. This isn't poetry, so it's neurochemistry. When you encounter something new, your hippocampus, the brain structure responsible for memory formation, fires with far greater activity. It creates more synaptic connections. It marks that moment as significant, and when you later look back to measure how much you've lived, your brain counts the landmarks, not the minutes. That's why your childhood vacations feel like they lasted forever. They were full of firsts: first ocean, first ice cream in that flavor, first summer friend. And that's why a week of routine work disappears without leaving a trace. But there's something even more unsettling in this equation: the proportion. When you are 6 years old, 1 year represents 1/6 of your entire conscious existence. It's an enormous slice of everything you have ever lived. Each year is new and represents a massive portion of your total experiential map. When you are 40, 1 year represents 1/40th of your life. Proportionally, it's almost negligible on the total map. The mathematics of perceived time changes as your timeline grows. The philosopher and mathematician Paul Janet formulated this in the 19th century as a law. The felt duration of any period is inversely proportional to the age of the subject. It isn't a metaphor. It's a mathematical relationship. And the more you advance through life without adding new experiences, the stronger this effect becomes. Now comes the part nobody mentions in conversations about productivity or work-life balance. You can change this. Not completely, but enough to feel the difference. Your brain doesn't need you to travel to the other side of the world. It needs novelty. Quality of novelty, not quantity. Researchers at the University of Miami, led by Aaron Heller, studied how small habit changes affect memory density over time. They found that groups who systematically introduce small new elements into their routine, a new route, a new skill, a new environment, consistently reported a perception of time passing more slowly, even when their lives changed very little objectively. The brain was being forced to pay attention. And paying attention is the only mechanism you have to stretch subjective time. But there's another side to this that is equally important to understand. The acceleration of time you feel isn't only about memory, it's also about attention in the present. When you are completely immersed in something, in a state that psychologist Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi described as flow, your perception of time distorts in a curious way. In the moment, time disappears. You lose all sense of how many hours have passed. But afterward, when you look back, that experience feels long, rich, or full. The opposite is also true. When you're just waiting, scrolling, numb, without purpose, time in the present feels slow. But when you look back, there's nothing there. The experience left no record. It's the paradox of attention. What feels slow in the present can feel rich in the past. What feels fast in the present can leave an enormous trail of memory. And what you pass through without paying attention simply disappears from the present and from the past. This has implications that go far beyond how you organize your day. When people reach the end of their lives and describe the feeling that it passed too quickly, what they are describing, in most cases, is not a lack of time. It's a lack of presence. It's the sum of thousands of moments that passed without registration, without attention, without enough emotional density to leave a mark. Bronnie Ware, an Australian nurse who spent years working with patients in the final stages of life, documented the most common regrets reported at the end of life. One of the most frequent patterns was not, "I should have worked less." It was a version of, "I didn't realize it was good while it was happening." That isn't nostalgia. It's an observation about attention. Life didn't pass quickly for those people because they were too busy. It passed quickly because they were present with very little frequency. And here something appears that neuroscience confirms, and that Stoic philosophy already intuited 2,000 years ago. Subjective time is, to a great extent, a matter of choosing where you place your attention. Marcus Aurelius, Roman emperor and Stoic philosopher, wrote in his Meditations that the only thing you truly possess is the present moment, not the past, which has already been reconstructed by memory, not the future, which is only projection, only the instant that is happening now. This wasn't spiritual advice. It was a strategy for psychological survival. But how does all of this translate into something concrete? First, you need to understand that novelty doesn't have to be dramatic. Your brain doesn't need an expedition to the Himalayas to create dense memories. It needs genuine engagement with what is in front of you, a conversation where you really listen, a meal where you really taste, a path you walk while paying attention to the details you've never noticed. Second, and this is the most counterintuitive point, routines are not the enemy. Routines you move through on autopilot are the enemy. A routine done with full presence, with real attention to what is happening, creates memory. A routine done with your mind somewhere else creates nothing. Third, what you avoid or postpone carries an invisible cost. Every experience you delayed, every trip you didn't take, every conversation you chose not to have. Each of these is a gap in the memory map your brain will use to measure how much you've lived. This isn't guilt, it's mechanics. Now think about the moment you woke up this morning. What did you see first? What did you feel? Was there light coming through the window? Was there any sound? Do you know the answers to those questions? If you don't, that moment has already disappeared from the record. It existed, but it didn't stay. And that happens hundreds of times a day. Life doesn't pass quickly because it's short. It passes quickly because most of it happens without a witness, without you present to register it. That is the counterintuitive truth behind the feeling that made you click on this video. It isn't the calendar that's wrong, it's the level of attention you bring to what's inside it. And the question that remains, the one that really matters to answer, is simple but not easy. What is happening right now, in this exact instant, while you watch this, that you haven't noticed yet? Because this moment, this exact one, is still here, different from all the others that have passed. You wake up on a Monday, you blink, and if you are present enough, an entire week can fit inside that blink.